So I posted this video yesterday on Instagram, and this effect you can see here is called banding. Now I was out and about just taking photos. I wasn't really prepped for video. I wasn't really planning on recording video, but I thought this would look excellent, slowed down. And I totally forgot to change a certain setting in the camera. Now someone did say that it is to do with shutter speed, where you can drop the shutter speed down to like 1/100 or 1/50, and that does seem to stop it, but people are limited to what they can change their shutter speed to. They like it locked off at a certain setting, and you can't drop it down to eradicate that. Now there are settings in the camera, NTSC and PAL. Now in PAL in the UK, mainly, in some parts of Europe it is PAL, and in like America, north of South America, and I think Japan, they have devices that are NTSC. So they both operate at different frequencies. I'm not going to try and pretend to know exactly the ins and outs and the scientific things behind this, but these devices have the option to switch from NTSC to PAL, because certain lights, including this one here behind me, they operate at different frequencies. So there's some flickering and banding, that we call it. Anyway, I'm going to show you a quick demo as to what I mean. Okay guys, so let me show you an example. This is a little demo. My camera settings there, 4K 120 at the top. You can see there, that's what resolution and frame rate I always shoot in for video. And then the bottom, as a rule of thumb for all video stuff, you do double the frame rate. So, or closer, the closest you can to double the frame rate. So mine's 1/250. And then if I was shooting at 60 frames per second, I'll drop it down to 1/125. Now, 4K 120, you can see that flickering, that banding. Now you can get rid of this if you crank your shutter speed down to 1/100. Now because I'm in 4K 120, it won't allow me to go down to 1/100. It's only over 1/125. So if I come to my movie settings, change it from 120 to 60. So I'm at 60 frames per second. So the rule of thumb, you should leave it 1/125 because it's pretty much double the frame rate. If we go down to 1/100, you can see the banding has stopped. So let's just click record on that. And then if I put the shutter speed to 1/125 and 1/160, you can just see it coming in there. And over 1/125, you can't really see it on here, but I do believe it is there, very, very subtle. Now, obviously, I can't shoot at 60 frames per second at 1/100 because I'm not going to achieve that super slow motion that I always get. So, unfortunately, you have to change a setting called PAL and NTSC. So at the moment, my camera is set at NTSC. Primarily, those frame rates and settings and frequencies are somewhere you'd find in America, I think Japan as well, something like that. But obviously within the camera settings, NTSC gives you 60 frames per second, 30, 24 and 120 frames per second. Obviously I like to shoot at 120 frames per second because that gives me the ability to slow down even more. But unfortunately, when you do come across these floodlights, which are a pain in the arse, I hate them, you have to change your camera settings to PAL. Change to PAL. PAL is more associated with Europe and the UK. And then when you do change to PAL, it might take a few seconds. Okay, so we're now on PAL, and this gives me different frame rates now. Look, you see you've got 50, 125 frames. So I would have to go down to 100 frames per second, which is annoying, like I said, because I like to shoot at 120. But yeah, so when you come across floodlights like that, drop it into PAL, 100 frames per second, and then you double the frame rate, so that's 1/200. And now look, there's no flickering at all. And I can go even higher if I want to, the higher the shutter speed. So yeah, basically that is it. It's the PAL and NTSC settings on your camera. There's some people out there obviously that are not shooting sports, and they can crank the shutter speed down and it will stop that banding. Yeah, so that is working perfectly in PAL. And switch it back to NTSC. There we go, look, running on NTSC. See that we're back on the band flickering, the 1/250. And that is what I experienced the other day. Obviously, I was there shooting photos, so I wasn't really in video mode or video ready. Normally I have all these settings changed and ready to go. So that's the difference. PAL and NTSC settings on your camera. So now I've just shifted around to the main light in the living room. This is in NTSC mode, so we're at 4K 120, 1/250 shutter speed, and you can see there's no banding or flickering at all. So there are some lights in the UK that will operate at different frequencies. It's just a bummer when you get to some of these stadiums or training pitches and the floodlights are flickering at the wrong frequency. Not the wrong frequency, but I suppose the wrong frequency for yourself. And for me, I'd love lights that are like this, because this light does not flicker at 4K 120 in NTSC mode, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't flicker in PAL mode either. Now, like I said, I don't pretend to know the ins and outs, the scientific reasons as to why, but yeah, that 100 frames per second, 1/200 shutter speed. There's no banding or flickering there either. So if you're filming at floodlights like that, then you're laughing, mate. There are lights that do operate in different frequencies. That one behind me, for some reason, doesn't flicker or band in PAL or NTSC mode. So I don't know what's going on there. If anyone knows, let me know in the comments. But yeah, you will come across some floodlights that do operate in PAL, which is like the 50 frames per second or 50 hertz. That's at 50 hertz or 60 hertz, different frequencies. And that's why when you do drop it into PAL at 50 frames per second or 100 frames per second, there will be no banding. But then obviously you'll go to other places, which I have been before, and those floodlights will operate at 60 hertz just fine. So your 60 frames per second and your 120 frames per second, there'll be none of that horrible banding. So I hope that has explained a lot. I hope you've understood it. I don't. But if you have any questions, please do put them in the comments down below. I'll try and answer them as best as I can. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.